Hi, kids. Welcome to Miss Nancy's College for Kids, Bible College for Kids. Today, I want to do something different. I want to introduce you to my books. I really wanted to wait till I had the kids interacting with me. But parents, you can get these books on Amazon, and all of these are a series. I've got 4 done, 1 almost finished that's been in the work for years, and then I've got a whole bunch more written, but they're not in print yet. So I'm going to show you how I can read one of these books and then do the questions and answers just like I do with the Bible, because some of them are word for word. In this one, I take the story of Jonah in the whale's belly and I smush it down to story form, the 4 chapters. So it's in the Old Testament, and guess what book it's in? Jonah. So let's go ahead, and I'm just going to read it and you can see the pictures. Parents, this is what I think is so fascinating about these books. They get a visual and they get the verbal. So it's a double witness and they'll retain it more. But again, I'll show you this. All of them is under Nancy Smith, Once Upon a Truth series, and this is A Whale of a Tale. And they all start the same. Once upon a truth, a long, long time ago, in a faraway land, lived a man named Jonah. The word of the Lord came to Jonah, saying, "Arise, go to the big city of Nineveh. Warn the people of it. Their wickedness has reached my ears." When you get a warning from God, you better pay attention. And Jonah was one of God's men. But Jonah ran from the presence of the Lord. Wonder how that goes for somebody trying to run away from the Lord. People does that all the time. He went to Joppa, found a ship, paid the fare, and went down into it. See these people waving from the deck? They're probably thinking they're going on a wonderful journey and wish they were going to go with them. So the Lord sent out a great wind into the sea. The giant waves crashed against a boat, almost breaking it. This is one trip Miss Nancy wouldn't have wanted to be in. All the mariners, that's the ship's people that worked, all the mariners were very afraid. Every man cried to his God and threw things overboard to lighten the ship. But Jonah was deep in the ship and fast asleep. The shipmaster came, saying, "Wake up, call on your God to save us, or we shall all surely die." Look, he's pretty angry. I believe if I was Jonah, I'd get up. The crew decided to cast lots. That's kind of like casting dice, rolling dice. It tells you something, predicts something. But the crew decided to cast lots. Now, I want to point out right here, up to this time, nobody knew why everything was happening like it was. After this, they all know whose fault it is. But they ended up casting lots to see who brought the trouble of evil upon them. The lot fell to Jonah. They asked Jonah to tell them why this was all happening and what they could do to help. Jonah replied, "I am a Hebrew. I fear the God of heaven, which made the sea and the land. I was trying to run away from him. This made the men more afraid. They asked, 'What can we do to help?' Well, to calm the sea." Jonah said, and I'm sure he hesitated to say this, guys, "Throw me overboard?" However, the crew, look at them, they rowed hard, trying to bring the ship ashore. Do you think they could? No, they could not. That wasn't God's plan. So they cried to Jonah's God to spare their lives. They threw Jonah overboard. Immediately the sea stopped its raging. The men praised God and promised to obey him. Look what's coming. But now the Lord had prepared a great fish to swallow Jonah up. The waves crashed over Jonah's head. The deep waters closed around him, and seaweed wrapped around his neck. The whale took Jonah to the bottom of the mountains. Now I want you to look. I think this is a healthy whale. I love this, and I cannot stand the thoughts of what it must have smelled like. But let's see what happened. He was in the fish's belly 3 days and 3 nights. As Jonah's soul was fainting, he cried, "Oh Lord my God, save me." Look what he's doing now, guys. Sometimes God has to get you in a position that the only way you can look is up. But Jonah, now he's got it right. The Lord spoke to the whale. And when I'm reading this book to my class, when I read these next words, I'll show you what we do. The Lord spoke to the whale. It vomited Jonah out on dry land. The word of the Lord came to Jonah the second time, saying, Arise, go preach what I told you. Look, even the crab didn't want to be around old Jonah. He smelled so bad. I'm sending this out to a little boy in my class who's not in my class anymore. But he said, raised his hand. He said, Miss Nancy, do you think he took a bath in the sea before he went to preach? And I said, hopefully he did. I'd never thought of that. I love kids asking questions. I'm always asking questions. But he told the people, you have 40 days to change your ways, or God will destroy Nineveh. Look what all the people did, guys. Sometimes all we got to do is tell them. All the people believed God. They prayed, they got right, they listened. They're going to stand in judgment someday and point their fingers at others because others didn't listen. But when the king of Nineveh heard, he arose from his royal throne, cast aside his royal robe, put on sackcloth and sat in ashes. Look, he was so beside himself, he threw off his crown. He made a proclamation that all people, both young and old, turn from their evil ways and beg God to spare their city. I wonder what God did. Here's what the people did, so here's what God did. The people obeyed. God heard their cry, answered their prayer, and spared the entire city of Nineveh. And according to what I could find, the number of people in Nineveh was over 120,000 souls. That's a lot back then. And don't let this keep you from buying the book. Just kidding. Now, I'm going to show you how we can answer the questions just like we did in the Bible, because this is almost word for word, but I kind of squished it in the story form. So, let's get on with it. Who is the main character in this story? Jonah. Where did God tell Jonah to go? And why? He said, go to Nineveh, that big city. And what did he want him to do or say? He said, tell them people there, their wickedness has reached my ears. So, did Jonah just go? He was so glad to do something for the Lord? No, he did not obey. What did he try to do? He tried to run from the presence of the Lord. Guys, you know, last time I mentioned that hide and seek when we was doing Ready or Not. Well, it was a couple lessons ago. But if you're trying to hide from the Lord, that's not going to work out too good for you. But where did Jonah go? He went to Joppa instead of Nineveh. And what did he do there? He boarded a ship, paid the money to get on, went down into it, and went sound asleep. What did the Lord do? That wasn't in his plan. He sent out a great wind into the ship, didn't he? Into the sea, against the ship. Great waves crashed against it. They were going to die probably if something hadn't given. But what did the captain do? He went down there to wake him up, didn't he? And he was not happy. And what did all the men do? They was trying to throw things overboard. They was praying to their gods, which were no gods. But the captain told Jonah something. What did he say? He said, get up. Call on your God, lest we all die. You know, he might save us. So the captain had the right idea. But when the crew, before this, nobody knew whose fault this was. When the crew cast lots, who did the lot fall to? On Jonah. I bet he felt a lot of pressure then, don't you? When they asked Jonah to tell them why all this was happening, what did Jonah tell them? He told them the truth. He said, I'm a Hebrew. I fear the God of heaven that made the land and the sea. How did that make the men feel? They were even scareder then, wasn't they? Then they asked, what can we do to calm the sea? What did Jonah reply? Remember, he went, throw me overboard? So, did they want to? No, first they tried to work it out, just like people try to be good enough, to work hard enough, to do enough good things to get to heaven. That ain't going to work either. You just have to be saved through Jesus' blood. So, what happened? They were saving themselves. They threw Jonah overboard. And what was there to meet him? At one point in the Bible, it calls it a great fish, and another one it calls it a whale. So either way, it was a big old whale. And it was coming up to meet him, and as he was going down, guys, shut your eyes and imagine this. Jonah's up here, the whale's coming up. Whoa! You know. And then that's the end of it. And then as soon as that happened, the sea calmed. Boy, the men started praising God, the God of Jonah, by the way, and promising him everything. We'll do this, we'll do that. But where did the whale take Jonah when he swallowed him? He took him to the bottom of the mountains. What's some things that it tells us about Jonah being in the whale's belly? He was there for 3 days and 3 nights, and the water was crushing him, and he could smell all the bad stuff in there, and the seaweed was around his throat, choking him. But when Jonah's soul was almost departing him, what did he do? He cried out, and what did he say? This is what we got to say, guys, when we get serious. If you're not a Christian, here's what you need to do. Oh, Lord God, save me. And, you know, even though he said later in the belly of hell, but he was in the belly of the whale at this point, that God heard him when he was up in heaven on the throne. So, when God spoke to that whale, and the whale was already going, if you can remember the picture, toward the land. The whale knew before Jonah did, probably. You know, many times in the Bible, God uses animals. It's fascinating. We might do that study on itself one time. But anyway, what did he tell the whale to do with Jonah? He said, take him to dry land and what? Blech, vomit him out. And that's what he did. So then he gives Jonah a second chance. Not everybody gets a second chance, guys. We're not promised of it. Some of us gets many chances before we're saved. And then each of us gets many after we're saved. But he said, go on to Nineveh and preach what I told you, didn't he? Did Jonah go this time? Yes, he did. How long did Nineveh have to change their ways or God would destroy their city? 40 days. 40 days is in the Bible several times. We'll probably get them lessons later on. Did the people believe Jonah or did they just make fun of him? They believed him, didn't they? When the king of Nineveh heard all this, what did he do? He's a king. He made a decree, a law. And he said, all people, both great and small, repent. Turn from your evil. Ask God to spare this city. And what did all the people do? They did exactly what the king said, or, you know, off with your head. What did God do? God saw all this, didn't he? And what did he do? He turned from his anger and he spared the whole city. Which I didn't go on to tell you the end of the story. I'm going to let you figure that one out for yourself. Sometimes I tell it, sometimes I don't. See if Jonah was happy about all that he got to do for the Lord or whether he was not. But anyway, guys, I hope you love this story and you can get these books. They're very helpful if you want them. They're not that much. I think they're about 13 something. But I hope you can come and be with us sometimes. And I can't wait to get the kids started, but that's a little bit of time in the process. So thanks for tuning in to YouTube, and I'll see you next time. Bye, kids.